So if you want to dominate your industry and become irreplaceable with your agency, you need to build what I like to call a moat around your agency. Otherwise, you're going to be trapped on this client hamster wheel and you're going to think that you're scaling when in reality, you're just replacing the same amount of clients every single month due to churn. Okay. You sign 5 clients, you lose 3. You sign 10 clients, you lose 7 of them. And you tell yourself that you're scaling, but in reality, you're just running faster on the same hamster wheel. Okay. So in this video, boys, I'm going to show you exactly why churn happens in the first place. The systems I've personally built within my own agency to have a sub 5% churn rate and how that made us completely impossible to replace. Okay. Ultimately just being a irreplaceable agency, because most agencies that have a high churn rate are basically just exactly like this hamster right here. Okay. They're sprinting on this fucking hamster wheel, chasing new paid in fulls every single time because they're not sure if the client they close will actually pay the payment plan, okay? Because they know they're going to churn at some point, all right? So that's why they rely on getting dopamine from these paid in fulls. And it's basically like a leaky bucket, right? They get new cash in and they know that 20 to 30, 40% of these people are going to churn in the next couple of weeks. And the reason for that is purely because of misaligned expectations in the beginning. There's an expectation gap from the sale onto the onboarding, which I'm going to dive a bit more into later. And the client, most of the time, is going to blame it on shitty lead quality, okay? Purely because the client is not in a position where they know how to close, because they're used to relying on referrals and so on, okay? And this is like one of the things that we realized within our own agency when we struggled a bit with churn, because we personally realized that 80% of the time it was the client's ability to sell these prospects that we got them that led to them actually churning, okay? So 80% of the time it was just their ability to actually sell, and 20% of the time was actually the lead quality, okay? But let's get back to the point here, all right? These clients are basically going to churn, right? They're going to get super fucking pissed, and that will ultimately, leave you with a trust pilot and a really bad reputation in the game, exactly like Virgin Media right here. You're just going to be going in cycles and cycles and cycles, and eventually your agency's reputation will basically be destroyed, right? You're going to have to rebrand and do everything all over and basically start a brand new agency, okay? So the way you basically prevent this, okay, and escape this hamster wheel in the first place is to basically build this right here, which I like to call a moat. Okay, so think about it like your agency right here is this castle, and then you have your moat, which is like the water surrounding the castle. Okay, and so if your competitors are going to try to enter the castle, they're obviously going to drown because of the water, right? So a moat is basically what's going to protect your business from being replaced, and it's also what makes the clients need you instead of wanting you. Okay, because anyone in this entire space can copy your offer, your ads, your landing page that you run for yourself and both for your clients, okay? But they cannot copy your moat, okay? Which is basically the backend system that keeps these clients winning, okay? Because the thing is, your competitors can't enter the castle in the first place, okay? They don't know what's actually going on in the internal of this castle, right? And once you build out this moat correctly, it's basically going to create this flywheel right here, okay? And basically every client that you bring on board and actually help is going to give you way more data, and that data improves your moat system. And once you improve the moat system, that basically creates better client results. And the better client results are obviously going to attract more clients through referrals and word of mouth and all of that stuff. And that's obviously how this flywheel is going to compound over time, okay? It's literally how you're going to go from churning clients to literally attracting clients. So your clients are basically going to go from wanting to leave you to actually never wanting to leave you, okay? And there's two main things to this, okay? You have to become irreplaceable and rare, okay? I like to say that you have to become as irreplaceable as a legendary scar in Fortnite. Obviously, you wouldn't trade that for like a fucking scoped AR or some bullshit like that, right? And you have to become as rare as a legendary chest on Fortnite, okay? So there's two things here, relationship and results, okay? So let's dive into the results first. So whenever you run an agency where you basically focuses on getting them qualified, showed up, good fit appointments, like I do, then there's only 3 things that you can directly control here, okay? And that is the leads you're getting them, the booked calls that you're getting them, the quality of those booked calls as well, and whether they show up or not, okay? And then the only 2 things that's left in the client's control, which you indirectly can control, is their ability to close them and retain those clients. But when you, for example, run a paper lead offer or something like that, where you only focus on getting them leads, it's going to be way harder for you to actually get really solid client results, purely because the client has to do way more than just closing and retaining the clients, right? They have to book them in, they have to make sure they're qualified and also showed up. And you'll ultimately have to build out your moat, the backend internal system, way larger, okay, which I'm going to go into in a bit. But most agencies, they only build systems for what they directly control, okay? But you have to realize, okay, the real retention lives in what you don't directly control, okay, which is in the sales and the retention, okay? And I remember Jeff Bezos, he said this right here: you have to eat your customers' complexity, meaning the more responsibility you personally take in the product or the service, the less pain it's going to be for the client. And the less pain it's going to be for the client, the way harder it's going to be to actually replace you. Okay. And so, what is the solution here? Okay. So, the solution is basically to create training and systems in the backend on what you don't directly control, which is the sales and retention, right? And that basically means implementing a video course, which is, 5 to 30-minute videos on, for example, offers and messaging, sales, objection handling, financing, all that stuff, retention, reactivation campaigns, and, for example, back and operation stuff. Okay. And you can also implement coaching call, which your best clients are going to host, and also build a community on either School or on Slack. And so this backend training course is basically what's going to focus on the aspects of success that you don't directly handle for clients, right? So since we run ads for these clients but don't handle sales or fulfillment, our training focuses on those areas. And the training program serves 5 purposes here, okay? Firstly, we want to help the clients close more of the leads you bring them to help them get a bigger ROI and basically create leverage, all right? Which in return means they stay for longer. Your retention is gonna, increase, and the likelihood of you getting referrals is gonna be way bigger. Okay. And it's also with the purpose of saving you a lot of time on training clients on the same things over and over and over again. Okay. You don't have to sit and review all these sales calls with the clients on checking calls, for example, or train them on sales because they don't know anything from beforehand. Okay. You're not going to have to be doing that individually. Okay. This is going to create a ton of leverage because you basically create video trainings on the most common problems your clients face. So when it arises, instead of repeating yourself on checking calls one-on-one with them, you can just direct them to the video. Not only that, but we have our entire CSM team go through the training materials as well. So whenever they get asked a question they've heard before, they can just direct them to the correct video. All right. It's that simple. It's also going to decrease the time to value. So clients can immediately start going through this and getting value instantly, while your team basically sets up everything in the back end, scripts the ads, set up the funnels, test everything. And in the meantime, the client is basically trained and ready to close deals. Okay. It's also going to give yourself another leg to stand on to prevent client churn. Okay. So we've obviously had clients before that want to churn due to performance, but stay because of the trainings, the live calls, and the network we have within our training program. Okay. This is fucking crazy. Okay. And worst case scenario as well, you can just downsell these clients on just the trainings. Not only that, but you also get to make way more money from your clients as well, because it's way easier to collect paid in fulls when you have the course content ready, because you can explain to the clients how the reason you collected upfront is because majority of the value or the information that you give them is provided within the first month, in the build out phase, and basically giving them access to your program and the network and so on. Okay. Now, when should you actually build this though? Okay, this is a great question. Now, I'd recommend that you build this when you have around like 10 to 15 clients and you start seeing like patterns, okay? Like who is actually winning and who's actually struggling. Like what are the percentages of the clients who get exceptional results, average results, and end up churning, okay? And also whenever clients blame on lead quality as well, you should definitely start considering building this out. And also when you want higher retainers or just back end revenue as well, okay? Or for example, if you have a high churn rate or the one-on-one time with clients is very heavy and super repetitive as well. So this is one of the things within the results thing that you should definitely build out. Now, the other thing that goes into this is obviously relationship, okay? So as I mentioned earlier, your competitors can copy your offers and ads, but they can't copy your relationship mode. Okay, this is the beauty. Okay, this is the cherry on top. Okay, because you want to combine emotional stickiness with operational trust. Okay, peep this photo, by the way. But clients basically leave agencies they don't actually feel led by. Okay, and they're gonna stay with those that make them feel understood and supported. Okay, this is so key. All right, because you have to realize that results they're expected. Okay, but relationship is what's going to surprise them. That's what's going to make them like you and want to actually stick around for way, way longer, because you want to become too integrated into their business and too emotionally trusted to be replaced. Okay, and another thing here that's huge is just having like a red carpet onboarding. Okay, so trust is obviously built within the first 7 days. And so if you spend 3 weeks onboarding a client, then the likelihood of them actually churning is going to be way, way longer. Okay. So that's why immediately after the sale, you have to bridge the handoff. So for example, my account manager, he uses the call transcript of the sales call. So the account manager basically understands the entire client from top to toe. All right. And he's going to sound like he's known the client for weeks. Right. And you also want to give them like a short first 7 days roadmap here as well. So they feel like progress is happening instantly and you'll actually, get to work instantly as well. So you basically have to make them feel like they're at a 5-star hotel. When you go to a nice hotel and, they give you towels, they give you all this nice stuff, right? That's when you just feel good, right? And you want to replicate that exact experience within the onboarding process, okay? Now, another thing that's huge within the onboarding and the launching phase of these ads for the clients is that you have to reset their expectations around time, communication, roles, and results, okay? This is huge because you ultimately want to under promise and over deliver here, okay? But you also want to over communicate, which I'll get back to in a minute. Because if your client expects this right here and in reality they get this right here, obviously they're gonna churn, right? They're gonna fucking run for their life. I would too, but most of the time here, you are going to realize that there is going to be an expectation gap from the sales team and from the success team. Okay, and this is purely because the sales team always wants to oversell in order to actually close the client, and the success team wants to under promise here and basically reset their expectations. All right, so that is very common to have this sort of expectation gap, and that's again why it's so important to just reset their expectation both on the onboarding call and also within the launch call. Okay, because for example, when I used to go out on the weekends and get wasted and all that stuff, the best moments I had during that period was when my expectations were super low and we went out and it turned out to be like the fucking best night of my life, right? Because my expectations was so low, all right? Versus, for example, when I had like really high expectations of how the night were gonna end, like I'm gonna get this really hot chick with me, like all this stuff. It never happened, right? Because my expectations was too high, right? I expected this and got left with this essentially. I mean, I'm not gay, but you get the point, right? So another thing as well you want to focus on is this communication flywheel, okay? So you want to be using structured message templates on performances, slow weeks, changing the offers and so on, because communication is the number one thing within the partnerships. Okay, your clients should never wonder on what's happening. Okay, they should always be updated. All right, and that's why you should either have weekly or bi-weekly calls with these clients depending on how well the performance and so on is with a client. If it's like really shit or it's a bit average, then I'd recommend you have a weekly one-on-one check-in with the clients, or you just do bi-weekly calls if the client is happy and the results are good. I always recommend you to start these calls with data just to remove emotion in the first place and validate how they feel, identify the bottleneck you're facing, present the action plan, and lead the conversation to confidence. Okay. Now, another thing as well is that you don't just want to be talking about this business yap right here. Okay. Because if you want to build a really good relationship with the client, you not only have to talk about business, but you also have to talk about real life stuff. Okay. And that's exactly when the client is going to feel heard, understood, and they'll actually enjoy working with you. Okay. Because you're a cool guy, right? Because you actually sound like you care about the client, right? And that's the most important part. All right. So the calmer you sound on these calls as well, the more trust you're going to earn. All right. Because again, most of the time, the clients don't churn from poor results. They churn from feeling unheard, which basically makes them super pissed. Right. So clients basically are going to trust the agencies that spot problems before they do. Okay, this is another huge thing. All right, you always want to be the first one to bring in the bad news with them because that shows that you're in complete control. right? If the client is the one coming to you like, hey, this is shit, this is shit, and this is shit, and you're like, oh shit, I didn't know. The client will be like, what the fuck? Who is this guy, right? Like, who have I basically paid, right? So that's why you always want to be on top by spotting problems before they do, okay? Because this is so huge. So this is like an example message you can send them as well if, you know, a performance dip or booking rate drops or whatever, because that is going to turn a potential panic moment for the client into confidence, right? You have full control. And the faster you bring them this clarity, the less they're going to micromanage you. The more they'll let go and, you know, let you do your thing, right? Because the goal is that they should never need to ask what's going on, all right? Because if the moment they ask what's going on, you've lost, all right? And this is the essence of being irreplaceable, okay? Proactive problem solving, all right? Now, another thing you want to be doing as well is to just shout them out when they hit goals. You know, you had a 45% closing rate this month. That's fucking huge, right? You cash collected 60K, right? Because positive reinforcement when a client has done good work is what's going to lock loyalty emotionally. Now, another thing in here as well that I mentioned a bit earlier with the whole community type thing is that this community is basically going to be retention glue, all right? These group calls, the client masterminds, the Slack community, because when you build this out, churning is going to feel like leaving a tribe and that you'll get massive FOMO, right? You have and bring the most updated stuff into your community every single week. And whenever the clients churn and don't get access to that anymore, they're going to get massive FOMO, right? Not only that, but the clients are going to learn from each other as well, right? Because of the network in there. And you also want to be showcasing your top clients as success stories as well. That's ultimately going to be, you know, show them what's possible if they stick around with us. All right. So the relationship extends beyond you. It's between clients themselves, right? The network is the moat. All right. This is huge, right? So you have to realize that results is what's going to get these clients in, but the relationship is what's going to keep them there forever. Okay. The moment they say, I just like working with them, that's when you won, my bro, because results make you valuable, but the relationship makes you irreplaceable. Okay. So whenever you master this within your agency and build out a relationship mode and also a result mode, which is built around the things that you don't directly control, that's ultimately when you're going to become rare and irreplaceable, and your agency is going to achieve a sub 10% churn. So if you want to get off this hamster wheel of chasing that dopamine every single month and losing the same amount of clients 30 days later, then you have to start building out these moats, okay? Because that's exactly how you're going to scale past 100K a month without replacing clients every 30 days, okay? So that was pretty much it for this video, boys. If you have any questions about this, feel free to DM me on IG as well. And make sure you like and subscribe as well, and I'll see you boys in the next one. Peace.